All right, it's been a minute, Will.
I was going to say, I was hoping you didn't have something against me. I haven't been on your podcast in a while, but I'm glad to join you, Nick.
Yeah, no, thanks. No, I just kind of want to catch up. First thing, kind of reflections. You've been here for 3 years, going on season 4. This is all new back then. You're a veteran now. What have you learned along the way?
I've learned that I can do it, and I've learned that it's still very hard to do it, but it's been incredibly rewarding, and I've loved that the way that this team has taken this city by storm, and the way that they've grown over the course of the 3 years going into year number 4. From a fan base standpoint, from a club growth standpoint, this club has taken, I think, a lot of mental real estate with this city. I think about, the first time I flew out of Charlotte after the club had started and hearing, Mayor Vi Lyles talking about, and the new Charlotte FC club. And now I flew out a couple weeks ago. They've made the re-recording where Charlotte FC now belongs in that same category with the other teams. So it's nice to see. And I also love that we're now on the precipice of a season that, quite frankly, has as much ambition and expectation as we've seen for any season, save for the first one. And I think part of that is given the way that the investment has happened, going back to Dean Smith last year and Wilfred Zaha during this offseason. I think it's really allowed for people to really take this club from a legitimacy standpoint seriously. And I think it also speaks to how much success they've had in the city comparative to some of the other teams here presently. And that's not to denigrate the others, but success will bring about attention, and I think that there's a very, very good reason why Charlotte FC has gained not only a lot of attention here locally, but obviously nationally as well in the league.
Well, I know you eat, breathe, sleep this club. Like, you are probably like one of the number one defenders of everything about this club. I almost feel like you're like the Addy of the club in a way, because like he gets fiery and
Sure.
stuff like that, and he'll defend anybody. He's like, "What are you doing messing around?" So knowing that, and knowing kind of you've been this voice of this, were there maybe like 3 things that have stood out to you that are kind of like highlights so far, or not necessarily highlights, but things that kind of help you remember?
Well, I remember our first goal that Jess and I called back in against Atlanta, the Adam Armour goal where he gets the nice header in from Ben Bender, and the thing that was so rewarding about that moment. As many people know, and we've talked about before, I try not to put a lot of spotlight on it, but most of the road games we do call from a monitor off-site, and makes it a different challenge. But as I've been told by so many people throughout the league, there are broadcast positions and broadcast spots that you probably would rather be on a monitor off-site than actually there. There are some places that don't have road press boxes.
Yeah.
I know that Toronto, I think, is one of them. I think Inter Miami, with the infusion of all of their attention, doesn't have a road press box as well because of all the stuff and attention around Messi. So it's not exactly a disadvantage in that regard. But obviously, when you're off-site, you have to kind of be a little bit more reserved and more thoughtful when you go about making a call, particularly of a goal with a lot of traffic in the middle. And I was proud of the fact that on that goal call, we got the identification right, that it was Adam Armour who scored, whereas TV said it was Guzman Carujo. A lot of it was skill, a lot of it was forethought, and a lot of it also felt somewhat like luck. I think about the first goal that was scored this season for Charlotte FC with Malanda, and I used the same kind of tool that I used with that particular goal, because it was a situation where you basically just look at the guy who's celebrating the most and the guy that they pan to the most, and you make that your call. And it was the same thing with Adam Armour in year 1. I find it ironic that the 3 goals of the first 4 that were scored in a year for Charlotte FC have come off of corner kicks, of corner kick headers in particular. Armour and the 2 from Malanda. The other one, of course, was Enzo Capetti's first MLS goal against St. Louis in year number 2. The second memory I would point to would be the Inter Miami game on decision day in year 2, because I think for a lot of people that represented very much an arrival moment. But I think of that game a lot because I think there was an initial nervousness based on how much Charlotte FC needed. We really didn't know how much Inter Miami was going to go for it. We'd gotten some indication that Tata Martino was going to hold some guys back because the game did not mean anything for them, and there obviously was a thought of, okay, we have to figure out who's going to stick around and play in what would be the first full year of Lionel Messi in this league. And so if anybody had fallen out of favor, for example, Joseph Martinez didn't play in that game, we were very much going to see maybe a mixed team, but there was obviously no word on Messi. I remember Jess and I had recorded our pregame match video from the field. We were on our way in the elevator the way up, and we got the team news notification on our phone that Messi was starting, and at that point, that took the initial already onset nervousness to a whole other level.
Right.
So Kerwin gets that goal right away. A little bit of that's lifted, but I can't remember feeling more like you're hanging on for dear life than the last 80 or so minutes of that game, because they threw everything that they could at Charlotte, and I think that was really the first indication of, okay, this team needs to be very difficult to beat in order to win. And I think part of what Dean has instilled with this team maybe dates back to that particular contest because of how impressive they were in that aspect. And I think too, seeing the way that they were so resilient in that game, and quite frankly, us in the broadcast. I mean, there were a couple of times where I looked over at Jess and I think, can Kalina even save another one of these? I mean, because it was pretty incredible to see the way that he had pulled through. He had one point blank one on Messi that he saved, and a couple of others. When full time was reached in that game, okay, we did our part. We get to the post game part of it. I look at Jess, and we really didn't rehearse this, but I looked at her and I'm like, we have to stay on the air. Like, we can't,
Right.
we can't go off the air until these other games go final, because we won't know necessarily whether or not Charlotte FC have made it. So typically we get off pretty quickly because in order to start our post game show. But I basically gave her a look and I was like, we have to keep going on. And so instinctively, I pulled up one game, she pulled up the other game, because there were two games going on. Mm-hmm. Her game ended first, and then I pulled the other one up, and when it went final, I think we both were just like, it was such a great feel of accomplishment, but also relief at the same time, because they had accomplished something that they hadn't done before, and that was an incredibly gratifying moment. And the third moment I would point to would be the viral goal against Cincinnati,
yeah.
with Karol Swiderski.
Yeah.
The second goal, the brace that he scored in 2023. That was a particularly unique moment, to say the least. The part that was born out of our social media team, which does a tremendous job. For whatever reason, instead of posting the goal call with the Apple call, ended up posting our call as the initial video that came out on the goal, and it got so much initial reaction, more so than even our videos, which I produce from our team account, from our station account, for our flagship WFNZ that I do every week. Mm-hmm. But we found that they were reacting to that. Jess noticed it first right after the game, and she said, "Will, there's a lot of reaction going on."
Right.
And some of the things that were being said, quite frankly, were somewhat negative and/or mean-spirited, and I couldn't get enough of just looking at it afterwards, and felt kind of bad going to bed, because I felt some kind of way about it, and I thought, it wasn't really different than anything that I'd done. It just was amplified on a larger scale. But then after I went to bed,
but you have random people also just like
true
saying stuff about
true.
you, and you're like, you don't know.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
just watch this one thing.
Exactly. But it definitely changed for the positive when I woke up in the morning the next day, because I know people from the team office ended up speaking about it. Some players even spoke about it. I heard from a couple of them as well privately, who said, keep doing what you do. We love it, and then a lot more of the more prominent international people, like Russell Brand, came out and said something nice about it, and a couple of others. I saw it written about in papers in Europe and Australia and elsewhere overseas. And then I got reached out to by Pablo Maurer of The Athletic, and he said, look, I want to write a piece about not just you, but just the overarching great thing about having the radio calls for home calls on Apple that allows that type of that impassioned voice, which, I know Apple wants to have the impartiality of the TV guys, and I think that part is great. But getting the opportunity to hear your home announcers on Apple, I think it's a great advertisement for that tool, and I'm glad that a lot of people have approached me about how much they use that, and that's I think an incredible tool that we have, and it really amplifies our broadcast. So I'm very happy about that, and happy that moment is remembered now so more fondly than anything else.
All right, you got a new partner this year. We were fortunate enough to interview her, and that'll be airing on the Atlanta match day. You've worked with two great people already.
Sure.
I'm sure you're pretty excited. It's also groundbreaking in that Jess was one of the first in MLS to be a female broadcaster, and then for the club, and then now you get another one. So what? How's it been so far with her, and like, what did you all do to kind of transition?
Well, first and foremost, I love the groundbreaking nature, but they're just, I look at them as just two great broadcasters, independent of being female. I think that's the way that I've always approached it. And when I worked in Missouri, I had a female producer who I think was better than most, if not all, the male producers I had. So I feel like it's great to have that part of it. But I look at them as just two great broadcasters.
Right. They just need opportunity.
Exactly.
That's really what it is.
And I'm very proud that the club recognized that and identified that particularly, and loved working with Jess, miss working with her, but first couple of games I've done with Anna have been incredible, and I think that we've got a real great chemistry together. We knew each other a little bit before she took the job, not necessarily that much, but we did some work during the preseason to kind of work with each other and see where the speech patterns were, and obviously there will be some growing that we have to do together to look at it and say, okay, know where to go in, know where I can leave her space. And I think intentionally we both have left each other a lot more space here early on. But as far as I'm concerned, she's incredible, incredibly polished, very, very detailed with her analysis and prep, which I've been very, very impressed with. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing how our relationship and partnership grows. And I think it comes at a very vital time. I told her, I said, you're getting on this train while it's already having left the station and going pretty fast. So she's very excited about it. I'm excited to continue working with her, and I can't wait to see what it sounds like even at the end of year one, and hopefully at the end of succeeding years as well.
Cool. All right. I asked her kind of a similar question. She didn't really know if she had any isms. So I was like, is there an Anna Woody-ism? I'm going to ask you, thinking about your first 3 years, have you developed some Willie P-isms that we would be like, yeah, I know Willie's going to say this, or this is something he would say?
I don't know if I have. I don't know if I have any isms, but I do. I will always throw a little food comment in there every time I can. One of the things that I did with Jess, and I'll be curious to kind of to take this when it comes with Anna, is that there were times where I'd make a movie reference that was very much be over at a lot of like American comedic movies, were things that Jess hadn't seen. So I want to see where Anna's movie watching echelon ends up comparing, just because I might say some things, whether it came from a sports movie, whether it came from an American comedy movie, where, like for example, Bob Uecker, Major League, where he says just a bit outside.
Yeah.
I think there could be something done with that if somebody misses something something wildly. Wondering if she'll pick up on that, because I know Jess probably didn't.
Yeah,
so
reminds me of Suits.
Exactly.
You ever seen that? Yeah.
Very much
the
so.
Interaction. Yeah.
So it very much kind of feels like that. But I don't know if there's anything. I mean, obviously, my signature obviously is the high pitched voice, I guess you could say. So I think that's, and you know what, and that if that's what I'm known for, I'll own it. I have no problem with it.
Well, there's nothing wrong with getting excited.
Of course. Well, that's the thing that I take this to heart, because I know some people it might be much for them, but the way that I was instructed, I guess you could say, by our first boss, Terry Fox. He said, I want you to be yourself. I want you to be you. I want you to be Willie watching the game at a bar, at a pub with his friends. I don't need you. I don't need you to come from an ivory tower. I don't need you to be, this grand authority. I want you to be the fan watching the game. So I want you yelling at the ref because we didn't get the call go our way, or I want you, you know, wondering why, you know, something happens in a game, and not to the point where you're acting ignorant, but like, well, I want to hear that passion. And I think that's something that I take to heart, and something like that. That's how I approach watching the game, because I covered baseball, basketball, football for the majority of the early part of my career. And when you do that over time, the fan kind of goes away a little bit. Like I'm at 41 Hornets games a year, and I go to a couple a year with my wife. I don't watch those games the same way that I used to watch a game of this basketball. You know, I went to Madison Square Garden for the first time when I was 12 years old, and I remember feeling like it was in awe. There's really not an awe when I walk into any NBA building now, just because it's my job to cover those games. Same thing for the NFL. I remember covering my first NFL game and feeling that kind of way, even just covering the game. But even now, it's like it feels like old hat. I get a different feeling when I walk into Bank of America Stadium as a Charlotte FC broadcaster, because I still have the fan aspect. I didn't get to cover the game from a journalistic aspect, if you will, which I think helps me, because I can still act like, again, I don't drink beer and curse and carry on like the way the guys are doing in the supporter section, but I'm as close to it because I want to be that voice of the fan for people who are out there listening.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Nick.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it.